I'm Arlene Herson, and my guest is a man who took a three-letter word, sex, and turned it into a five-letter word, money. In the 60s, he was a starving artist living in Europe. There he had a vision, a magazine showing beautiful women in a way no one had dared to before. Well, he dared, and he succeeded, and today he is one of the richest men in the world. Forbes has his current wealth estimated at over $300 million. His success has been phenomenal. How did he do it? With guts, talent, and determination, and a magazine called Penthouse that revolutionized the publishing industry. My guest is Bob Guccione. We're here in his townhouse in New York City. We'll meet him right after these messages, so please stay right there.
Children are the largest group of Americans living below the poverty line. They have to reach higher for what others take for granted: health care, balanced meals, encouragement to learn. But with help early on, children in your community can gain the skills to get out from below the poverty line. It takes programs like Success by Six and people like you to help them take the first step. Call to learn more. Change the world of a child, and you change the world.
Vince, that new dummy cam is great.
Yeah, it'll sure give people a whole new outlook on what it's like when you don't wear a safety belt.
I think they'll get the picture.
You could learn a lot from a dummy. Buckle your safety belt. She is one of America's toughest drug enforcement agents. Last year, she helped convict 90 drug dealers, seize several tons of crack and marijuana, and close down 10 major drug operations. She is a 68-year-old grandmother named Irma. She set up a community drug watch that is not only changing her neighborhood, but its future. There are many ways to help in your community. Call the Points of Light Foundation. Do something good. Feel something real.
I'm Arlene Herson, and my guest is Bob Guccione, and here we are in his townhouse in New York City. Beautiful townhouse, and thank you very much for having us here.
Pleasure.
You know, this is, as I mentioned, one of the most beautiful houses that I've been in. You have an incredible life, but it really started because of a magazine called Penthouse. You had a vision many, many years ago. You started it in Europe. It's 20 years now that you've had Penthouse in the United States. What were you thinking of when you started it?
Thinking of getting a job, permanent employment. I was in, when I started Penthouse, apart from a short stint of running a newspaper in London, I really had no background or experience for anything else. So creating Penthouse was a way of guaranteeing employment. And that's really why I did it.
You know, it's interesting because you had said that you were fired from, we talked once before, fired from almost every job that you had had in the past. Now, when you say, you know, Penthouse was your salvation, I mean, lots of people think about doing something, but starting a magazine like Penthouse, doing the things you've done, making the money that you did, I mean, you know, I just can't imagine what you were thinking or how you got the money or how you did it.
I think if I foresaw all of this, or thought that I foresaw it, I might not have been as good at it. I might have been more fearful, you see. But when you don't know what the future holds, you take all kinds of extravagant chances, and you really have to take extravagant chances to take giant steps forward. You can't feel your way along. You really have to, you know, rush in where angels fear to tread.
Okay, but you know, it's not just a question of taking chances. You had to do it yourself. I mean, there you were. You didn't have any money. You were almost broke. You were a starving artist. You were, you know, practically.
I was a little more than broke. I hadn't paid my rent for 6 months. By the time Penthouse actually came out, I owed everybody money, and every landlord in town was looking for me because we kept flitting from one place to another. We just couldn't pay the rent. And the bad publicity that it attended the mailing of our original subscription brochure, which put us in business, caused all of my credit to dry up. You know, I was hearing myself mentioned on Parliament, on BBC, talking about how my name was brought up in Parliament that day, how I was being investigated by 3 separate parliamentary subcommittees because I was Italian and American, and I was operating in England doing something that hadn't been done before. There were no men's magazines, and they saw this formally and officially as the spearhead of a flood of pornography that threatened to sweep across Britain. And they saw me as heading it up, and I think concluded that there were other forces behind me. In fact, there was nobody behind me. I was operating entirely alone. As I say, I owed everybody money. I couldn't even get a pack of cigarettes on credit anymore. I was in a real desperate state.
You not only had any money, you had an idea for a magazine, you got people to work for you. Lots of them worked with for no money at all.
Yes.
But
everybody except photographers.
yeah, now that's the point.
I managed to get writers, artists, cartoonists, journalists of every description to contribute to the new magazine for free, just to help create a new market for themselves, ultimately. But when I went to the most essential person at that time, which would have been a centerfold photographer, they looked at me as if I was crazy. You know, you want me to work for nothing? You want me to give you my pictures for nothing? They were the only people who wouldn't play ball. They wouldn't contribute anything. So that's why I became a photographer. If it wasn't for that, I would never have become a photographer. I did it because I couldn't afford to pay anyone else. And it was easy for me to learn photography because my background as a painter gave me all the savvy I needed for composition and light and so on. I just had to translate that from the mental images of a painter to the physical images of a photographer.
You know, when you say it, it sounds so easy. Sure, you were desperate, you didn't have any money, so you started a magazine like Penthouse. You needed a photographer, so you learned and you took pictures. But they're fabulous pictures. I mean, you take pictures in the magazine today of that are just so outstanding. With no course, you just picked up a camera and did it?
The way it started was kind of cute. Of course, I was living in England at the time, and a friend of mine, a fellow I knew from New York, came to London, and he was a photographer. He had an assignment to shoot a fashion layout for an American men's magazine, other than Playboy. So he said to me, look, I can save a lot of money if you pose for me, if you and your wife, act as my models. So I said, okay, I'll do it, but you got to show me how to use a camera. You got to teach me how to take pictures. So he said, okay, it was a deal. So I went out and I posed for his fashion pictures, and that night he came to give me my first lesson. We spent an hour working with his camera, and he showed me how to read it, how to set the aperture and so on. And at the end of the lesson, I said to him, thanks a lot. He said, okay, I'll give you another lesson tomorrow. I said, tomorrow's too late. I had already booked 3 models for the next day. This was a Saturday night that he was giving me a lesson. I had booked 3 models for that Sunday. So I felt I was already equipped. So I went ahead and I shot those 3 girls for the whole day. And I used the pictures were usable, and I ultimately used them in the magazine. But the first centerfold, because I really was desperately broke, the first centerfold was an English girl that I had met. She was South African, but she was living in England. She had been a student in England for a while, so she was really more English than South African. But I met her on the King's Road in Chelsea, London, and I stopped her and said, would you like to pose for a men's magazine? I had done this a number of times, and for the same number of times I was rejected, turned down by girls who looked at me askance, because there were no magazines in England comparable to the American Playboy. There were no English equivalents. So, of course, this was a whole new thing. Would you pose for a centerfold? I didn't understand what it was all about. Anyway, this one girl showed a little bit of interest. And so I talked to her, and she said, well, how much does it pay? And in those days, I had no idea how much I was going to pay. I just first wanted to find a girl who was willing to pose. But in those days, the secretary was getting £5 sterling a week. So I said, well, it pays £5 an hour. And she said, oh, great, okay, I'll do it. So when I shot my first centerfold using this girl, I completed it in 45 minutes, thus becoming the world's fastest photographer of women.
You certainly don't do things cheaply now. Maybe you still do them fast, and we have to do something fast now. We have to take a break, and then we'll come back and talk some more. We're speaking with Bob Guccione in his townhouse. We'll be right back after these messages.
He protects all living things in the forest. But he can't do it alone. Please don't play with matches. Put out your campfires. And never, ever forget the words of Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent forest fires.
Remember how good it felt the first time you gave 5? Well, now there's another way to give 5. Set a goal to give more. 5 hours a week and 5% of your income to the causes you care about. It'll make you feel like a winner every day of your life. So give more. Give 5. Call 1-800-55-GIVE-5.
October 1987. A small child is rescued from an abandoned well. No country comes to the aid of a child the way we do. Yet today, millions of children need our help, lost in an education system unable to prepare them for today's competitive world. Imagine if that same effort went into keeping the promise that every child gets the best education and has a future. Call 1-800-96-PROMISE for information on changing the schools in your community.
Children love to be out in the sun, but remember that their skin can sunburn easily, and bad sunburns in childhood can lead to skin cancer as an adult. So protect your kids with hats and clothing. Avoid direct sun when it's most intense from about 10 to 3, and always use a sunscreen with a protection factor of 15 or more.
You too, Daddy.
Help your children enjoy the outdoors in good health and safety. For a free booklet, write the Will Rogers Institute, White Plains, New York.
I'm Arlene Herson. My guest is Bob Guccione. We were talking, I mean, you are such a phenomenal success, but then you mentioned something in the last segment when you posed for a fashion layout with, you said, your wife.
With my then wife, yes.
Not the
That was my second wife. Kathy and I only just got married. We've been engaged for 25 years, but we just got married a year ago.
I know, gee, when you said you do things fast, this took you a long time to make up. We're going to talk about, but tell me, you were married at that time.
Yes.
And your marriage broke up, did you tell me earlier, because of Penthouse?
My marriage broke up 25 years ago because I wanted to start Penthouse, and we couldn't agree on it. I think that my wife at that time thought that working on a magazine like Penthouse would create domestic problems, and perhaps it would have, I don't know. But things seem to have turned out right.
Yeah, well, they obviously turned out right for you.
We're still close. I mean, Kathy and I are both very close to my second wife, and my first wife for that matter. And we're close with the children, my kids. So it's a big, happy, extended family, and we're all benefiting by experience.
Most people don't think about Bob Guccione as a family man, but you have 5 children, and I had the pleasure of meeting your mom, who's a terrific lady, and your father at a City Meals on Wheels benefit, but you are a family man.
Oh yes, very much so.
You know, but it's a whole different view.
I know it's bad for my public image.
Yeah.
To think that I'm a family man, but I don't party. My swimming pool is not filled with nude women, but that's the way it is.
Okay, well, you know why? Because so much of what the public hears and sees, first of all, in your magazine, there are naked women. When you first brought Penthouse to the United States, it was the first total frontal nudity ever.
Right.
Now, was your intent in those days to shock?
Yes. It was always my intention to be controversial. In this business, in the entertainment business, or the publishing business, one has to be controversial. The New York Times is controversial in its way. And the National Enquirer is controversial in another way, and Penthouse, of course, in a third way. But the public is so jaded because of its exposure to media, the vast expanse of media that is constantly bludgeoning the public from the television screen to the cinema screen, magazines, newspapers, books, and so on. So you have got to fight for that little bit of public attention. It isn't good enough just to do something really well. You have to fight for their attention. And that's what we did in the beginning, and we've been doing it ever since.
You sure do. I mean, when you get attention...
But full frontal nudity, let me go back to that for a second, was not just a factor of shock. It was part of a personal philosophy of mine, which said that nudity is obscene if you try to hide it, if you try to explain it away, or you're ashamed of it or feel guilty about it. That's what makes nudity obscene. It's the fear of it, the sense of guilt that one associates with nudity, sense of shame. And that is wrong. That is the obscenity, because God made us what we are. He made us in his own image. Therefore, no part of the human anatomy, nude or otherwise, can have an obscenity as part of it or built into it. The obscenity is what we create when we photograph or somehow replicate the human form in one way or another. We can either do it obscenely, that is to say artlessly, or we can do it artistically and beautifully. And Penthouse has always attempted to do it beautifully and artistically, shock factor aside. Nudity can be wonderful, or it can be a put-down.
Okay, I know that's the way you feel, and that's your personal philosophy, and obviously it's worked. But lots of people don't feel that way, and they open up Penthouse magazine, and they're shocked, and they're embarrassed by those photos.
Yeah,
and
but much less today. In the very beginning, this was largely true. But today, everybody has. I mean, since we started it, all the other magazines have done it. You can now see full frontal nudity on television. You can see it on the premier movie channels like HBO and Cinemax, which is owned by Time Inc., which is like the mecca of apple pie and clean-cut Americana. So,
yes, but it still embarrasses no matter where you see it, no matter whose stamp of approval in it. Many people are still embarrassed by it. Does anything embarrass Bob Guccione?
Oh, sure. Oh, yes.
What? What embarrasses you?
Anything that I would personally find demeaning to the human sexual condition, anything which is put down to men or women or the relationship. I hate things that are done badly. I'm a perfectionist in my work, not just in taking photographs, but in designing the magazine and publishing all the magazines that I publish. I won't tolerate anything which is badly done or artlessly done. And I find that is what I wouldn't publish.
Okay, but I'm not talking about, I'm saying personally what embarrasses you.
More things than would go into my magazine embarrass me. I'm much more prudish than the public would imagine. I mean, really so, to the point of exasperating some of those who are close to me.
Well,
if Kathy and I are going out and her gown is a little too low cut, I refuse to go out with her. She has to go back and change. And that might sound absurd. I still, although my two daughters are well over 21, I still impose a very prudish will over the way they live their lives. And one of them is married.
That's it. Well, how would you feel if your daughters posed for a magazine?
I wouldn't
like
allow them
Penthouse?
to. I wouldn't allow them to.
Why?
Firstly, it's a very strange question and difficult question to ask me, because being in the business, it would have other ramifications other than the issue of morality, because the fact that I'm Bob Guccione and that I own Penthouse and my daughter were to appear in another magazine would be very scandalous and would attract inordinate attention. So I wouldn't allow it for that reason. But if my daughter wanted to, and she had the will, she has, after all, the same will that I have, and she determined to go out and do it, she could do it and get away with it.
Even though our father was...
She just upset me, so...
Bob Guccione, the father, would be upset. Okay, I'm upset.
I just cut her allowance,
I'm upset because we have to take a break. But we do, and we'll be back. I'm speaking with Bob Guccione. We'll be back right after these messages.
Because disaster strikes someone every single day, there's always going to be one more night someone needs food, shelter, and a place to rest. Please support the American Red Cross. Because without your help, one more night could be hard to come by.
That's my dad. And that's Mom. Dad's got an idea. A way to get rid of all the grody garbage that's polluting the world. He's invented a big rocket ship to shoot all the garbage into outer space. Mom's not sure, but Dad says his invention will save the world.
There's an easier way to save the world. Recycle. For your free recycling action guide, write Recycle. Environmental Defense Fund, 257 Park Avenue South, New York, New York.
You don't have to embarrass a friend to keep her from drinking and driving. You could just explain things to her.
It's 6:45 and our party's at 9 and I still got shopping to do. But if you drive, you'll have to drop me off and pick me up and then I'll be late and you won't be ready. So I'm going to drive and drop you off and then I'm going to do all the things I need to do and I'll be back in time to help you set things up. Okay? All right.
Take the keys, call a cab, take a stand. Friends don't let friends drive drunk.
What is a man? A man stands up for himself. A man looks you in the eye. A man shares his strength. A man protects his child. If you're a man with a woman who's pregnant, help her get the care she needs now. Because if you don't, for help, just call.
I'm Arlene Herson, and we're speaking in his house with Bob Guccione. You constantly amaze me because we are having a conversation now, and I am speaking with Bob Guccione, the man who dethroned Vanessa Williams, Miss America, the man who runs Penthouse magazine, the man that most feminists would love to strangle. And yet you're so normal, and you're so down to earth, and you're so nice.
Thank you.
I mean, probably a lot of people are going to be.
Comes through.
Okay, well, but it's true, and I don't think that most people really know Bob Guccione, the private person, because the public person is all over the front pages. I mean, you constantly have controversy. I mentioned Miss America, Vanessa Williams. Actually, I had interviewed her when she was Miss America. Did you ever regret doing that?
No, not really. The whole thing with the Vanessa Williams pictures was we had nothing to do, obviously, with the creation of those pictures. They were brought to us by the photographer who had taken them some years earlier. The real problem was in Vanessa herself. She never answered the telephone. This guy tried to call her. The photographer tried to get in touch with her. She ignored him. She did sign a model release. And we have a copy of it. And when he came to see me, I took advantage of what was a real editorial opportunity. That became one of the biggest news stories of the decade. No one can deny that. Everybody picked it up. And at the time, people were saying, Guccione says this is a news story, ha, ha, ha. And yet there they were talking about it on the news, top of the news. And it really happened because Vanessa Williams, when she went into the Miss America pageant, was given a piece of paper to sign, saying, among other things, that she never did anything in her past that would embarrass the pageant should it surface during her activities with the pageant. She signed as if there was nothing there. So when those pictures were published, it was largely her fault. She had never disclosed that information to the pageant. The pageant then took a very dim view of the whole thing and decided that they were going to throw her out. If all of this palaver didn't go on, no one would really have paid much attention to it. So I don't feel guilty about it. She did the pictures, and if you saw the pictures, then you know that she's anything but innocent.
Yes, we did definitely, and as a matter of fact, we've had a chance to show them while we speak.
And we wouldn't be talking about Vanessa Williams. Her name is famous because of Penthouse, not because of the Miss America pageant.
Absolutely, and it sold a lot of magazines.
Right.
And those magazines are really what, all those magazines that you sell is really why you can live in a wonderful house like this. Now, you've gotten married, actually, because we mentioned earlier that you were engaged to Kathy Keaton for almost 25 years.
Right.
Why did you decide to get married?
Well, I figured that we had a good, proper engagement, that we knew a lot about each other, and the time was right. Actually, Kathy and I always planned to get married. Only we were going to wait until we were even older, but we decided that we'd do it when we did it, and that we would run off and do it secretly. So we actually eloped after 25 years. No one knew about it. We only had two people at it, the best man and the best woman.
Well, it took you a little bit of time to make up your mind.
Yeah, well, certain things I'm very slow.
Okay, married man. A lot of what you do is not just Penthouse. You publish Omni magazine, Longevity magazine, Four Wheeler. You have a great publishing empire. The public doesn't really see you that way. The public sees you as Bob Guccione, Penthouse. How would you like the public to see you? What would you like them to know about you?
Well, I think if they knew as much about me as you already do, I would be satisfied. I don't really care to educate the public with respect to my life or my lifestyle or the people around me. Sometimes it's better to let them have their own image, because whatever that image is, it's the image that provokes their interest. So sometimes it's not good to burst that little bubble.
Okay, but we have 1 minute left, and I want to know from you.
1 minute?
I want to know from you how you would like the public to think about Bob Guccione when they think about you.
Well, I'd like them to think that I'm a decent, reasonable guy, and that I've fought a lot of good causes. I've fought a lot of battles that have benefited the public. A lot of First Amendment battles that have certainly benefited not only the public but the media. And I've done this around the world, not only in the United States. So we've done a few good things. We've uncovered a lot of stories in Penthouse through our investigative reporting. We did our cancer series, which opened the door to a lot of new cancer research. We had cancer therapies taken off the unproven methods list and reinstated for proper clinical trials because of our interest in the subject. We've helped a lot of medical people, doctors, researchers, scientists, and so on. So we've done a lot of good things as well.
Bob Guccione, the do-gooder. Bob Guccione, also at home, does not smoke,
and the
drink.
Nude photographer.
Pardon me?
Doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, doesn't use drugs, doesn't gamble, doesn't go to nightclubs.
Okay, so we're going to close. What do you do for fun?
Watch television.
Well, I hope that you watch my show.
Yes, of course.
And I hope you're going to watch this show. And I thank you very much.
Well, thank you
for spending time with us. It's a whole different Bob Guccione that we got to know today, and I thank you for being here. I hope that you have enjoyed the time that we spent here with Bob Guccione, and I hope that you'll join me again next week. Meantime, good night. Hope to see you then.
Want to know more about talking to your children about AIDS? Send for a free information guide. Call 1-800-342-AIDS.